The elevator dinged. Remy stiffened. He stood beside the kitchen counter, gripping a towel like a lifeline. His stomach twisted so hard he thought he might bend with it. The silence in the penthouse was thin, stretched, one breath away from snapping. Danson didn't turn around. He just straightened his shoulders and stared at the doors as they slid open. His family entered like a verdict. Julia Cole stepped out first. Her coat didn't even sway, her posture didn't allow it. Everett followed with his steady, disappointed calm. Lydia came next, tapping her tablet quickly. Mason brought up the rear, eyes sharp and assessing. No one else spoke. No one else looked around. Their presence was enough. Julia's gaze swept the room once. So it's real. Danson didn't blink. Good morning, Mother. No, Julia said, it isn't. Everett stopped a few feet away from his son. Tell me how bad it is. It's bad, Danson said simply. Lydia kept tapping on her screen, jaw tight. She didn't say a word. Mason surveyed the penthouse. The board is boiling about this. Remy tried not to shake. He felt Julia's eyes move to him like a spotlight. And that is him, she said. Danson stepped in front of Remy before she could take another step. You're not talking to him like that. Julia's expression didn't change. You brought this boy into the public eye. That was naive. He's not a boy, Danson said. He's Remy. His name, Julia replied, is not the issue. Everett folded his hands. The situation is bigger than him. Bigger than both of you. If you love stories where boys fall hard, hearts collide, and emotions hit like music, subscribe to Boy Love Ballads and let the romance begin. Danson didn't move. Mason spoke next. The board wants explanations. You know how they get. They don't like surprises. Especially not emotional ones. Remy winced. Julia immediately caught it. See, she said quietly. He seems nervous already. Because he's being judged, Danson snapped. By people who haven't even spoken to him. Julia tilted her head. We don't need to speak to him to see the fallout. Everett added, this situation is costing us. Stock already dipped. Investors are asking questions. Remy looked down. His chest ached. Danson's voice lowered. Leave him out of it. We can't, Julia said. He's the center of it. A breath caught in Remy's throat. Julia continued, you've put us in a weak position with the West Coast. Danson frowned. Why the West Coast? Everett looked at him like the question was ridiculous. The alliance. The arrangement. The negotiations we've been building for over 20 years. Julia crossed her arms. Your engagement, Danson. Remy froze. The room tilted. Danson stared at his parents. I already told you, I'm not doing that. You don't get to refuse, Julia said simply. Yes, Everett agreed. You accepted the mantle when you took over the company. You accepted the responsibilities. This is one of them. Danson shook his head. I told you from the beginning, I'm not marrying for politics. Then you're risking everything, Julia said. And for what? She didn't look at Remy when she said it. She didn't have to. Remy felt the burn anyway. Danson's face hardened. For the truth. Julia stepped closer. Remy felt the air around her tighten. The Westons think this scandal shows instability. They're sending someone today. Remy swallowed hard. Someone? Julia didn't even look at him. An envoy. Mason nodded. Probably to judge if Danson can still handle the alliance. Danson scoffed. I'm done with the alliance. Everett's voice dropped. The alliance keeps this family powerful. Then it's worth less than you think, Danson replied. Julia inhaled sharply. You're throwing away a strategic marriage for a Jan. Remy, Danson snapped. His name is Remy. Julia didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. You are choosing a man who cannot stand in the world you were born into. Everett added quietly, and you're dragging him into something he can't survive. Remy blinked fast. His chest tightened like something was crushing him. Danson said, I choose him. The penthouse went silent. Julia stared at him, almost stunned. Say that again. I choose Remy, Danson repeated. End of story. Everett's jaw worked, tension rising through his neck. You'll lose more than partnerships. I know. You'll lose your standing, Mason warned. You'll lose the board. I know. You could lose your position completely, Everett said. I know. Julia folded her arms, lips thin as paper. Then you've chosen your path. Remy felt like he couldn't breathe. Julia looked at Everett. We should go. We have work to do. Everett nodded. The envoy arrives today. Prepare for that. Today? Danson asked. Today, Julia said. They will see everything. They will write everything. They will judge everything. Remy's stomach dropped. They'll judge me, he whispered. Julia didn't look at him. They'll judge Danson. She pressed the elevator button. And they'll see exactly why. When the doors closed behind them, the silence they left was thick and cruel. Remy felt like it was pressing against his ribs. Danson let out a long, exhausted breath. I'm sorry. Remy shook his head. You shouldn't have said you choose me. I meant it. That's the problem. Danson moved closer. No. The problem is a family who forgets I'm a human being. Remy whispered, they're going to hurt you because of me. Danson looked at him gently. Then let them try. Remy's voice cracked. You're going to lose everything. Danson didn't hesitate. I'll lose everything except what matters. The elevator dinged again. Both men stiffened. Already? Danson muttered. Maybe, Remy whispered. The doors opened. A young woman stepped out. She looked nothing like someone who could decide the fate of empires. She was small, tidy, wrapped in a soft brown coat that looked warm instead of expensive. Her boots were worn at the sides. Her hair was tied back in a loose knot with curls falling out of it. She held a leather folder pressed to her chest like she didn't want to drop it. Hi, she said softly. Sorry. I hope I'm not interrupting. Danson blinked. Who are you? Oh. She straightened, cheeks pinking slightly. Sorry. I'm Nora. Remy exhaled slowly. She didn't look dangerous. She looked like someone who apologized for existing. She continued quickly. I'm the assistant they sent ahead from the western side. The envoy will arrive later, but I came early. I tend to be early to everything. It's a problem. I'm working on it. Danson stared at her. Assistant? She nodded with the enthusiasm of someone who was too anxious to be anything but sincere. Assistant. Logistics, scheduling, helping you to not implode, if possible. Remy almost smiled at her delivery. She stepped farther inside, careful not to touch anything. I know things must be overwhelming. I'm really just here to help. Danson eased a little. You're really the assistant? Yes, she said earnestly. I promise I'm qualified. I color code spreadsheets. Remy let out a small, startled laugh. Nora brightened instantly. Oh good, you laughed. That means the tension isn't completely taking over your body. That's step one. Danson glanced at Remy, surprised at the sound of his laughter. Nora continued, opening her folder. Okay, step 2 is breathing. Step 3 is snacks. Snacks? Remy asked. Yes, she said firmly. Always snacks. She pulled out a small container. Cookies. Danson stared. Remy blinked. Nora grinned. I bake when I'm nervous, she said. I've been very nervous today. Remy took one. It's good. Nora puffed up proudly. Thank you. They're new. Danson reached out and took one too. Not bad. Yes. Nora whispered, pumping a small fist. That is victory. She walked to the table like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to, then set her folder down gently. May I sit here? She asked. Yes, Danson said before Remy could. Nora sat softly, almost timidly, like she was afraid the chair might complain. I'll go through some notes. You two, take a moment. Her eyes were warm. Not judgmental. Not calculating. Just soft. Remy's breathing eased without his permission. Danson's shoulders loosened. And Nora smiled at both of them like she was happy to be useful. Let's get through today together, she said gently. And for the first time since the Cole family arrived, the room didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt survivable. And that was enough for now. Chapter 2. The penthouse didn't feel like the same place it had been an hour ago. It was still big. Still quiet in the wrong places. Still sitting under the heavy shadow of everything the Cole family had dropped on them. But now there was a girl at the dining table humming softly and drawing tiny color-coded boxes on a notepad, and somehow that made everything feel a little less like the sky was falling. Remy stood near the counter, pretending to rinse a mug he'd already washed twice. His shoulders weren't as tight. His breathing didn't fight him anymore. Danson watched Nora with a strange mix of suspicion and relief. She was already at work, flipping open page after page and muttering things like, "Okay, maybe yellow means chaos," and "Oh no, red looks too serious, pink? Purple? Purple is diplomatic." Remy almost laughed. Nora looked up suddenly. "You two don't happen to have sticky notes, do you?" "I work better with sticky notes." Danson blinked. "No." Remy looked through a drawer anyway. Nora gasped dramatically. "Oh, you're looking. That's so kind, thank you." Danson watched Remy's ears turn red. He had no idea what to do with someone who reacted that sweetly to blue drawers. "I found highlighters," Remy said. Nora lit up. "Even better. Highlighters are like sticky notes that have already accepted their destiny." Danson and Remy stared at her. Nora paused. "That made sense in my head." Remy laughed under his breath. Nora beamed again, proudly. She had this effect, like a small patch of sunlight that didn't know it had wandered into a winter storm. Danson finally stepped forward. "You said the envoy is arriving later?" "Yes." Nora tapped her folder. "His flight landed an hour ago. He'll meet some West Coast board members first, then come here." "Today?" Remy asked quietly. "Yep," Nora said gently. "Today. But don't panic." Remy opened his mouth. "I'm not panicking." "You're holding the mug like it owes you money," Nora pointed out. Remy looked down. He loosened his grip. Danson snorted. Nora brightened again. "Progress." She flipped another page. "The first order of business is making sure the envoy sees stability. Communication. Preparedness." "Preparedness," Remy repeated softly. "Yes." Nora nodded. "And also, positivity." Danson's voice was dry. "We don't have any positivity at the moment." "That's fine," Nora said. "That's why I'm here. I brought some." She pulled a small bag of tiny smiley face stickers from her folder. Danson stared. "Why?" Nora shrugged. "For emergencies." Remy turned away so she wouldn't see him smiling again. She placed the sticker bag on the table like a serious tool. "Okay," Nora continued. "Let me understand the situation. Remy, what has today been like for you?" Danson answered before Remy could. "He's been through hell." "I can speak," Remy whispered. Danson stepped back, flushed with embarrassment. "Sorry." Nora watched Remy kindly. "What happened?" Remy exhaled. "Danson's family said a lot. Some of it wasn't nice." Nora's face softened. "I'm sorry." "They said he has to marry someone," Remy continued. "They said I'm a liability." Nora blinked. "They said that?" "Yes." She looked at him like she just witnessed someone kick a puppy. "That's awful." "It's fine," Remy tried. "No, it isn't," Nora said firmly. "That's harsh. Really harsh." Danson crossed his arms. "Exactly." Nora nodded. "Remy, I'll make sure the envoy sees you for who you are. Not who they think you are." Remy glanced up, surprised. "Will?" "Yes." Nora smiled earnestly. "You're obviously a good person. And Danson's family, well, they want control. But the envoy doesn't have to think the same way." Danson raised an eyebrow. "You don't work for my family." "Nope," Nora said proudly. "I work for paperwork and color-coded peace." Remy let out a shaky laugh. Danson softened too. "Thank you." Nora waved it off. "I'm just doing my job." She didn't seem affected by the seriousness of the situation, but not because she didn't care. She simply held herself like she believed problems were things you solved by kindness, cookies, and a spreadsheet. Okay, Nora said, flipping pages. Next, media strategy. Danson stiffened. Media? Nora nodded. There's been noise on social platforms. Some rumors. Nothing official. But the envoy will want to know how you're handling it. Remy's breath faltered. What kind of rumors? Nora hesitated. Danson stepped forward. Tell us. Nora flipped her folder around gently. A few posts saying you and Remy have an unstable dynamic. Remy's heart dropped. Nora added quickly, nothing serious. It's mostly nonsense. But we should address it. Danson frowned. How? By showing stability, Nora said. Not perfection. Just consistency. Support. Care. Remy looked down again. Nora leaned forward. Is it okay if I ask something? Danson nodded. Go ahead. How did you two, meet? Remy felt his chest warm. Danson's too. It's a long story, Danson said. Nora smiled gently. I like long stories. It wasn't glamorous, Remy murmured. Doesn't need to be, Nora said. Love rarely is. Both men froze. Nora gasped, covering her mouth. Oh no, I shouldn't assume. I'm so sorry, pretend I didn't say that. Oh gosh. Ignore me. Remy blinked. Danson coughed. Nora fanned her face in embarrassment. I'm here 5 minutes and already messing up. Remy shook his head quickly. No. It's okay. Danson nodded. Really? Nora peered up sheepishly. Are you sure? Yes, both men said at once. She exhaled in relief. But I'd hate my first assignment to be accidentally offended the so and his, friend. Remy flushed. Danson looked away. Nora clapped lightly. Okay, let's keep going before I make this worse. She checked her notes again. We need to prepare for the envoy's questions. He'll want to know how you two communicate. Remy blinked. Communicate? Yes, Nora said. For example, how you support each other under stress. Remy hesitated. He began quietly. Danson stepped in. We talk through everything. Nora nodded. But that's good. And we keep each other grounded, Danson added. Yes, Remy whispered. Nora's smile warmed again. I can see that. Danson looked at Remy, something soft passing between them. Nora saw it too but didn't comment. She simply wrote something down with a tiny doodle of 2 stick figures holding hands. Then she caught herself and scribbled it out. Sorry, she murmured. It's fine, Remy said, hiding a smile. Okay, Nora said, tapping her pen. Another thing. The envoy might ask about boundaries. Boundaries? Danson repeated. Yes, Nora said. How you balance personal and professional. Remy swallowed. We don't always. That's normal, Nora replied gently. We just have to phrase it well. Danson raised an eyebrow. Phrase it how? Nora smiled confidently. Like this, we're learning. Danson seemed to consider that. That works. It does, Remy agreed quietly. Nora jotted it down. Great. The air shifted again, lighter, easier, calmer, every time she spoke. She didn't dominate the room. She didn't command anything. She carried herself like someone who didn't know she brought peace just by being there. Danson finally sat down, rubbing the back of his neck. How long until the envoy gets here? Nora checked her phone. About 3 hours. Remy's heart thudded. Danson closed his eyes briefly. 3 hours. Nora gave a sympathetic smile. That's why I'm here early. So we can use the time. She pulled out a small binder. So, what do you say we get started with a little practice? Danson stared. Practice for what? Questions, Nora said brightly. Hard ones. Soft ones. Confusing ones. She tapped her pen. Why should I trust your relationship? Remy's chest tightened. Danson straightened. Nora held her pen up dramatically. Go. Danson answered without hesitation. Because it's real. Nora smiled. But, Remy? Your turn. Remy swallowed. Because I care about him. That's good too, Nora said gently. Simple works. Remy nodded, relieved. Okay, Nora continued. Next question. Is Remy influencing company decisions? No, Danson said sharply. Nora wrote something down. Right. Then explain why. Because decisions go through the board, Danson said. Remy has no access. And because he doesn't want to be part of that world, Remy added softly. Nora pointed at him. Perfect. Danson exhaled. This is actually helping. Nora smiled shyly. I'm glad. They kept going. For the next hour, she made them practice everything from crisis questions to personal compatibility questions, always shifting tone so they wouldn't get overwhelmed. Sometimes she cracked jokes. Sometimes she offered cookies. Sometimes she told them they were doing better than they thought. Every time she spoke, Remy relaxed a little more. Every time she smiled, Danson felt the room soften. She wasn't part of their world, and yet she made it feel less dangerous. At some point, she leaned forward and whispered, I think you two are going to be fine. Danson met her eyes. You do. Nora nodded confidently. Absolutely. Remy looked up at her, hope flickering in his chest. Nora added, You're both trying. And trying matters more than anything. Danson let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Remy's eyes warmed. Nora clapped once. Break time. Break? Danson asked. Yes. Nora said. You two need a break. I need water. And cookies. Mostly cookies. Remy smiled weakly. I'll get you water. Oh, no, oh gosh, no, please don't, Nora said, waving her hands. You're the one under stress. I should get you water. All the water. Buckets of water. Danson snorted again. Nora. Yes. Sit down. She sat instantly. Yes, sir. Danson shook his head, amused. Stop calling me sir. Okay, Nora said sweetly. Danson. That's better. Nora hugged her folder to her chest and smiled. Good. For a moment, the room just breathed. Then Remy whispered, Thank you. Nora blinked. For what? For all of this. Oh. Nora flushed. I'm just doing my job. Danson said, You're doing more than that. She glanced between them shyly. Oh. I'm glad I can help. Remy looked down at the table. Nora leaned forward. We're going to get through this. All three of us. Danson looked at her closely. You really believe that? She nodded without hesitation. I do. And somehow, in a penthouse where everything felt like it was falling apart, Nora's belief made the walls feel less heavy, less sharp, less cruel. The kind of belief that made you think maybe things really could work out, even when everything else said otherwise. Okay, Nora said brightly, break time's over. She popped her pen cap back on. Let's begin again. And just like that, the world didn't feel impossible anymore. Chapter 3. The elevator dinged. So innocent. But the sound rippled through the penthouse like a warning bell. Remy's fingers tightened around the arm of the chair. Danson straightened instantly. Even Nora paused mid-sentence, the pen in her hand hovering over her notes. Is that Dorn again? Remy whispered. No, Nora said quickly. He wouldn't come back without calling. But she didn't sound confident. And Danson knew it. The elevator door slid open. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped out, older, crisp, sharp angles everywhere, carrying the formal chill of the West Coast offices. He looked around the penthouse with professional disapproval and then fixed his gaze on Nora. There you are, Miss Weston, he said. The world stopped. Completely. Remy went still. Danson blinked. Nora's smile died instantly. Something inside her froze, just for a heartbeat, but she quickly tried to pull the smile back. It didn't return properly. Hi, she said weakly. Mr. Halden. I thought you weren't coming until... You were supposed to wait in the hotel lobby. His voice was flat, stern. And you were certainly not supposed to reveal yourself to the Coles without clearance. Remy stared at him. Then at her. Reveal, he breathed. Danson's jaw clenched. What is he talking about? Nora swallowed hard. She stepped back, bumping slightly into the counter. Her fingers twisted into the hem of her sleeves. I was going to tell you, she whispered. Nora, Danson said slowly, what's happening? The assistant, Halden, answered for her. Her name, he said, is Eleanor Weston. Remy's heart punched his ribs. Danson's breath went cold. Eleanor closed her eyes for a second, then looked up with a fragile, apologetic expression. Sorry. Remy's pulse hammered. You're the Weston heir? Not heir, Eleanor whispered. But I'm the daughter. Danson stepped in front of Remy on instinct. You lied to us. I didn't lie, Eleanor said quickly. I just used my nickname. Remy's hands trembled. You're the girl Danson is supposed to marry. The words came out too soft, almost lost. Eleanor's face fell. I know. Danson took a sharp breath. Why didn't you tell us? Because if I walked in as Eleanor Weston, she said, voice cracking, you would both shut down. You wouldn't talk to me. You wouldn't trust me. You'd be terrified. Remy felt a sting behind his eyes. Eleanor continued quietly. And I didn't want to be the enemy the moment I entered. Halden stepped forward. Miss Weston, we must leave immediately. No, she whispered. Nora, Remy said accidentally, then corrected himself. Eleanor, why are you here? Eleanor's throat tightened. Because I needed to see for myself. Danson stared. See what? That this wasn't just rumors. That you weren't just rebelling. Her eyes landed on Remy. That you cared for him. Remy stepped back as if struck. Eleanor's voice softened further. And that he cared for you. Halden sighed impatiently. Miss Weston, this is not appropriate. Eleanor spun around, surprising all of them. Stop talking. Halden immediately shut his mouth. The room fell silent. Eleanor turned back to Danson and Remy. Her shoulders were small but her eyes were painfully sincere. I came here because I wanted to understand what you were risking everything for. Danson looked shaken. Truly shaken. And now you do? He asked. Eleanor nodded slowly. I do. Remy swallowed. Then what now? Eleanor took a breath. I don't want to hurt either of you. Danson stiffened. But your family... Yes, she whispered. My family expects an alliance marriage. She looked almost embarrassed saying it. But I don't want something built on fear or force. Danson blinked. Then you're against the marriage? Eleanor hesitated. Halden opened his mouth, but she raised her hand sharply, silencing him. I don't know yet, she admitted. I need time. I need to see this through. I need to speak to Dorn. I need to understand what this will cost. Remy shook his head. You're making it sound like it's a business deal. It is, Eleanor said softly. But it's also more than that. Danson exhaled, frustration bleeding through his voice. Why didn't you tell us sooner? Because I liked being Nora, she whispered. The assistant with cookies and sticky notes. The girl no one was afraid of. Remy's breath caught. People listen differently when you're not Eleanor Weston. She looked down. And I liked being someone you didn't look at with fear. Remy whispered, I wasn't scared of you. Eleanor gave a sad smile. You were kind to me. Both of you were. Nora, the sweet helper in sweatshirts, still peeked through Eleanor's polished facade. She took another breath. I want to help. I want to talk to Dorn. I want to convince him you're not a threat to the alliance. Danson blinked. You do that? Yes. Remy stared at her. And, what about the engagement? He whispered. Eleanor's lips parted slowly. I'm not here to take your place, Remy. Danson inhaled sharply. Remy's knees nearly buckled. I don't want to be a pawn, she added quietly. And I don't want Danson to be forced into anything. But, she added carefully, I have responsibilities. And expectations. There are people depending on me too. Remy felt the sting of those words. Danson stepped forward. So what do you want from us? Eleanor looked down, twisting her fingers. I want honesty, she said softly. I want you to let me help. I want to see who all of us are when we're not drowning. Remy closed his eyes. Danson rubbed the back of his neck. This is a mess. Eleanor let out a small, frustrated laugh. I know. Holden stepped forward again. Miss Weston. Eleanor held up a finger. Not yet. She crossed the room slowly until she stood a few feet from Remy. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't mean to deceive you. Remy's throat tightened. But you did. Eleanor nodded sadly. Yes. And I'll spend as long as it takes to fix that. Danson watched her closely, confused, conflicted, but noticeably less hostile than before. Eleanor turned to leave. Holden followed, relieved. But before stepping into the elevator, she paused and looked over her shoulder. I'll be back, she said quietly, before Dorn makes his final decision. Why? Danson asked. Eleanor met his eyes. Because I don't want to watch your family be destroyed. Then her gaze flicked to Remy. And I don't want to watch you be destroyed either. Remy froze. Danson froze. Eleanor offered them a small, warm, almost heartbreakingly gentle smile. Almost like the real Nora. Then the elevator doors closed. And the room felt hollow without her. Remy sat down slowly, his hands shaking. Danson ran a hand through his hair. What the hell do we do now? Remy whispered. I liked her. As Nora. Danson swallowed hard. Maybe she's still her. Mason, who had been lingering near the hall, stepped forward with a grim look. That girl, he said slowly, is far more dangerous than she looks. Remy looked up sharply. Dangerous? Mason nodded. Yes. But the terrifying part isn't that she's dangerous. He paused. It's that she's very good at pretending she isn't. Chapter 4. The penthouse felt different after Eleanor left. Not colder, just quieter. As if she'd walked out with half the air. Remy sat on the couch staring at his hands, trying to breathe without shaking. Danson stood by the window, tense shoulders rising and falling slowly. Mason remained near the hallway, watching both of them with the kind of look that came from years of seeing disasters begin. The elevator dinged again. Remy tensed immediately, but this time the doors didn't slide open right away. As if someone inside hesitated. They opened. And Eleanor stepped out alone. She took one step inside, stopped, and raised her hands slightly. I know, she said softly. I know this is uncomfortable. But please, don't shut me out. Remy looked at her, really looked. Her hair was slightly messy, her breathing uneven, her eyes still a little red from the earlier confrontation. She didn't look like an heiress. She looked like someone's little sister trying not to cry. Danson exhaled, long and controlled. You came back fast. I didn't leave, Eleanor admitted. I went down 2 floors, panicked, argued with myself for 2 minutes and came back. Mason blinked. You argued with yourself? Eleanor nodded without shame. Yes. It was a very stern internal discussion. Remy's lips twitched. Just a little. Eleanor took another step. I know I shocked you. And I know I messed up. But if I walk away now, it looks like I came to invade your life and then ran the moment things got real. She clasped her hands. And that's not who I want to be. Danson rubbed his face. Eleanor. Call me Nora, she said immediately. He paused. Are you sure? Yes, she said softly. That's who you met. That's who I want to be here. Remy looked up slowly, caught off guard by the sincerity in her voice. She turned to him. You were kind to Nora. You didn't hesitate, you didn't flinch. And I don't want to lose that because of the name Weston. Remy swallowed hard. I wasn't being kind to an heiress. I was being kind to a girl with sticky notes. Eleanor gave a small smile. I still have them. Danson walked toward her, stopping a few steps away. What do you want, Eleanor? Nora took a slow breath. To help. Then softer. And to make this right. Mason crossed his arms. You really think you can fix this? Nora looked at him with unexpected steadiness. I can try. She wasn't arrogant about it. She sounded like someone who knew she was swimming against a current but was determined anyway. Danson wasn't convinced. Dorn isn't easy to sway. My parents aren't easy to sway. Your family might. My family will listen to me if I speak clearly, Nora said. They won't like it. But they'll listen. Remy shook his head slightly. But why would they listen to you? Something soft flickered in her expression. Because I almost died 3 years ago. The room went silent. Remy blinked. What? Nora's voice didn't tremble, but her fingers did. It was a car accident. A drunk driver. My parents thought they lost me for 12 minutes. Danson stared. And afterward, she continued quietly, they decided they would never ignore my voice again. Remy's chest tightened painfully. That's not pity, Nora said quickly. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. I'm telling you because it matters. If I say the alliance shouldn't be built on fear, they'll hear me. She looked between them. If I say you're not a threat, they'll hear that too. Danson walked around the back of the couch, tension slowly fading from his shoulders. You would do that for us? He asked. Nora nodded. Yes. Remy's voice came out thin. Why? She hesitated, then told the truth. Because I like you. Both of you. Remy's heart fluttered uncomfortably. I didn't expect to, she said honestly. I didn't expect to find anything here except paperwork and anger. But there you were. Her eyes flickered to Remy. You were warm the moment I walked in. Remy looked down quickly, cheeks flushed. That matters to me, she whispered. Danson let out a careful breath. So you're not here to force me into anything? No, Nora said firmly. I'm not here to force anything. I'm here because the Westons should understand exactly what's at stake, not storm in and punish people without context. She glanced around. And I want to make sure they don't. Mason stepped closer, studying her. You're saying all the right things. I just hope they're true. Nora met his gaze without flinching. They are. Remy watched them, still unsure, but Nora's sincerity cracked something. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that she wasn't the monster her title suggested. Danson finally sank onto the arm of the couch. All right, he said quietly. Then help us. Nora nodded quickly. But first thing, I need to talk to Dorn alone. Remy's stomach dropped. Is that safe? He won't yell at me, she said with a tiny shrug. He's terrified of my mother. Mason coughed. I see the bloodline is healthy. Nora cracked a laugh, small but real. Danson rubbed his forehead. You want to talk to him today? Yes, Nora said. He's still in your building. He's meeting with 2 board members in the conference lounge. If I go before he leaves, I can get ahead of this. Remy's anxiety spiked. What if he blames you for coming undercover? Nora smiled softly. He won't. My mother sent me. Danson stiffened. What? Nora winced. Sorry, that was badly phrased. You mean, Danson started. She didn't send me as an assistant, Nora clarified. She sent me to observe quietly, but the assistant disguise was my idea. She doesn't know about that part. Oh, Remy whispered. Danson pressed a hand to his face. Of course she doesn't. Nora stepped closer. I'm on your side, she repeated, more firmly this time. I know what this looks like, but I meant it when I said I'm not here to ruin your life. Remy looked at her, eyes softening again. Thank you. Nora smiled gently. Don't thank me yet. Let me actually fix something first. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and glanced around awkwardly. Can I come back after talking to Dorn? Danson raised a brow. You're asking permission? Yes, she said simply. I don't want to walk in again if you don't want me here. Remy answered before Danson could. Come back. Nora's face warmed instantly. I will. She turned toward the elevator and nearly walked straight into Mason, who had moved closer without her noticing. Oh, she gasped. Mason smirked. You're a brave kid. Nora blinked. Am I? Braver than most of the businessmen I've met, he said. Just don't get yourself eaten by Dorn. She saluted him. If I scream, come running. Mason chuckled. I'll bring a frying pan. Nora grinned and stepped into the elevator. Before the doors closed, she leaned forward. Remy. He looked up. You don't have to be scared of me, she said softly. Then she looked at Danson. And you don't have to be angry with me. The doors slid shut. The silence left behind felt gentler than before. Remy exhaled shakily. She's not what I expected. Danson shook his head slowly. No, she isn't. Mason cleared his throat. I'll admit it. I like her. Danson shot him a look. Don't start liking her. Too late, Mason replied. She's charming. It's unhealthy. Remy smiled slightly. Danson paced the room slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. If she's being honest, this helps us. A lot. And if she's lying? Mason asked. Remy swallowed. Then we're finished. Danson stopped pacing. He looked at Remy. And then something unspoken passed between them. Trust, fear, hope, all crushed into one fragile moment. The elevator dinged again. Remy jumped. But it wasn't Nora. It was Lydia, holding a grocery bag that was far too full. She froze when she saw the two tense faces staring back at her. I brought snacks, she said. Danson blinked. But good timing. Lydia set the bag down and began pulling out items. Apples, granola, yogurt, cereal bars. Mason raised an eyebrow. Are we hosting a kindergarten? Lydia ignored him. Remy, are you eating? Remy opened his mouth, but Danson answered. He's not. I'm forcing him. You're not forcing me, Remy muttered. You haven't eaten since yesterday, Lydia replied. That's forcing. Remy sighed. I'm not hungry. Eat an apple, Lydia said. No. Eat a cereal bar. No. Eat something or I'm calling your mother. Remy froze in horror. I'll eat the apple. Danson hid a laugh. Mason didn't even try. Lydia handed Remy the apple, then crossed her arms. So? What happened while I was out? Danson hesitated. Mason answered for him. The assistant is the heiress. Lydia dropped her phone. What? The girl with the buns and the sweater vests? Yes, Remy said weakly. Lydia pressed a hand to her chest. Oh, good. She's adorable. Remy blinked. What? She's adorable, Lydia repeated. If she wanted your head on a platter, she'd look mean. She looks like a cupcake. Mason coughed. An expensive cupcake. Lydia turned to Danson. And? Did she freak out? Threaten you? Scream? Cry? She apologized, Danson said. A lot. And she's going to talk to Dorn, Remy added. Lydia's brows lifted. That's surprisingly responsible. Danson sighed. I don't know what to think yet. Lydia shrugged. Think this, she didn't have to care. But she does. Remy watched the floor, feeling something warm flicker in his chest. Something hopeful. 2 hours passed. Remy cleaned the kitchen counters twice even though they weren't dirty. Lydia watched a drama on her tablet. Mason read the newspaper. Danson sat on the arm of the couch, tapping his foot against the floor rhythmically, one tap every 2 seconds, never breaking pace. The minutes dragged. The elevator dinged. This time, Remy wasn't scared. Nora stepped out slowly, holding her bag to her chest. Her eyes were puffy. She had definitely been crying. Remy stood up immediately. Danson took 3 quick steps toward her. What happened? Danson asked. Nora wiped her cheek with her sleeve. Dorn listened. Did he yell at you? Remy asked softly. No, Nora said. That's the problem. Mason frowned. What? Nora took a shaky breath. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just nodded and said he understood. Danson stiffened. That's bad. Nora nodded. Very. Remy's voice was almost a whisper. Is he going to attack us? Nora shook her head. No, not yet. But he said he needs to review everything with the Weston board. Danson cursed under his breath. Remy sat down slowly, hands trembling. Nora hurried toward him and knelt in front of the coffee table. Don't panic, she said softly. Please don't panic. Remy looked up at her. I told him you're not dangerous, she continued quickly. I told him this wasn't manipulation. I told him you're not threatening the alliance. And he listened? Remy asked, voice small. He heard me, Nora corrected. Hearing and listening aren't the same. Danson ran a hand over his face. So now what? Nora looked up at him, eyes steadier now. Now, she said, we prepare. Together. Remy felt a quiet warmth bloom inside him. Danson watched Nora for a long moment, the tension in his shoulders easing. You're really on our side, aren't you? Nora nodded. Yes. Remy whispered, why are you helping us so much? She hesitated, then told the truth. Because I don't want to be the girl who ruins someone else's happiness. Silence. Pure, heavy silence. And in that moment, she didn't look like a Weston heiress. Or a political tool. Or a future threat. She looked like someone who meant every gentle word she said. Someone Remy wanted to trust. Someone Danson wanted to believe. Someone Mason grudgingly respected. Nora stood again and brushed off her knees. Whatever happens, she said softly, I'm not leaving you alone in this. Remy felt the apple in his hand suddenly taste sweeter. Danson straightened, jaw firming. Then we'll face it together. Nora smiled, small, fragile but bright. And for the first time since the reveal, the room didn't feel like a battlefield. It felt almost safe. Almost. But enough. For now. Chapter 5. The next morning came too early. Remy barely slept. Danson barely slept. Mason didn't sleep at all. Lydia slept but woke up looking like she regretted that decision. The penthouse was silent when the elevator dinged. Nora stepped out with a bright smile, balancing a tray of drinks. Good morning, she chirped. I brought coffee. And something green that might be healthy. Remy blinked. You brought drinks? Yes, she said proudly. Because meetings are stressful, and stressed people need caffeine and emotional support. Danson raised a brow. Is the green one emotional support? It's spinach, Nora said. Remy nearly gagged. Mason stared at her like she was an alien. You woke up early and bought drinks from 3 different places. Nora nodded cheerfully. Yes. Because each of you has different preferences. Remy stared. How do you know that? Nora smiled. I observe. She handed Danson a plain black coffee. Hands him Remy's latte with caramel. Hands Mason an espresso. Gives Lydia a chai. Remy felt warm inside for no reason. Danson looked impressed. Mason looked suspicious. Lydia looked in love. Nora set the tray down. We need to plan today. Danson crossed his arms. What did Dorn say? Nora sighed, her shoulders slumping. He's scared of making the wrong move. Which means he's about to make all the wrong moves. Mason groaned. Fantastic. Nora stepped forward, her expression gentle. I think the next few days are going to be heavy. And I want to help you handle it without falling apart. She looked at Remy when she said the last part. Remy swallowed. Danson exhaled. What do you recommend? Nora brightened, pulling a small binder out of her bag. Remy blinked. When did you? I didn't sleep, Nora admitted. So I organized. It's my coping mechanism. Lydia clapped softly. Adorable. Mason muttered, concerning. Nora spread the binder on the table. We need to show stability. That means coordinated statements, controlled meetings, and... She paused. Then looked at Remy, softening her voice. Remy, sweetie, I think maybe you shouldn't be in the next few meetings. Remy froze. Danson frowned. Why not? Nora spoke gently, like she was soothing a skittish child. People are looking for a weak link. If they see you're nervous or overwhelmed, they'll use it against Danson. I don't want that to happen. Remy stiffened. I'm not weak, he said quietly. I didn't say you were, Nora replied quickly. I said they're looking for someone to call weak. They'll twist anything. Mason's gaze sharpened. Remy looked down at his hands. Nora reached out and touched his wrist lightly. Remy, I'm trying to protect you. The words landed softly, almost tender. Danson placed a hand on the table, thinking. She has a point, he murmured. Remy's stomach twisted. Nora continued in a soft, worried voice. I know it feels unfair. I know it feels like I'm pushing you aside. But I'm not. I promise. You matter here. You matter a lot. She smiled sadly. And that's exactly why I don't want them tearing you apart. Remy didn't know what to say. Nora turned to Danson. And you need to appear strong. Controlled. Logical. Having Remy hovering around you while everything is collapsing might make people think you're distracted. Danson rubbed his forehead. I hate that you're right. Remy's chest tightened painfully. Nora reached for his hand again, her voice soft. I'm not excluding you. I'm shielding you. Remy nodded weakly. He believed her. Of course he did. She was kind. She was gentle. She wasn't trying to hurt him. She couldn't be. Nora brightened suddenly. But planning continues. She flipped open the binder again. Next topic, public perception. Danson frowned. There's public perception now? Oh yes, Nora said. Anonymous posts are circulating. Paparazzi are asking questions. Remy's pulse spiked. Paparazzi? Nora immediately turned to him, eyes wide with sympathy. Oh no. Don't panic. They're not here. They don't know where you live. It's just whispers online. Remy swallowed shakily. Nora leaned closer, lowering her voice. They're guessing. They're always guessing. That's what they do. Danson stepped in. Remy is not a media story. I know, Nora said softly. And I'll make sure he stays that way. Remy's chest loosened a bit. Nora reached into her bag again. I drafted a small statement for you to give to Dorn. It'll help soften the board. She pushed the paper toward Danson. He read it, then blinked. This is good. I wrote it at 4 a.m, Nora said proudly. Mason leaned in, scanning the page. His expression tightened, subtle but real. Danson didn't notice. Remy didn't either. Only Lydia caught it. Mason, something wrong? Mason shook his head. Just thinking. Nora didn't seem to notice. She moved to sit beside Remy. I need your help with something. Remy perked up a little. My help? Yes. Nora nodded earnestly. I want to understand Danson's rhythms. His stress patterns. How he reacts to conflict. You know him better than anyone right now. Remy flushed at the compliment. Nora added softly. Your perspective matters. He looked down shy. Okay, he whispered. What do you want to know? Nora leaned closer, voice gentle. Everything. For the next hour, Remy talked. About Danson's temper. His panic triggers. His childhood perfectionism. His insomnia. His father's pressure. His mother's subtle expectations. His fear of failing everyone. Nora nodded, listening intently, occasionally taking notes. Every time Remy hesitated, she encouraged him softly. That's helpful. That makes sense. You're doing great. Danson had no idea this conversation was happening. By the time Remy finished, he felt lighter. Like he'd shared something important. Like someone finally understood the pressure Danson lived under. Nora sat back with a warm smile. Thank you. This helps me support him better. Remy smiled shyly. But Mason watched from the kitchen doorway with narrowed eyes. He didn't like the way she'd asked the questions. He didn't like how quickly she'd gotten Remy talking. He didn't like how she kept smiling sweetly while collecting details like puzzle pieces. But he said nothing. Not yet. Later that afternoon, Danson got a call from his father and stepped into the study. The moment he shut the door, Nora turned to Remy. You should rest, she said softly. You look exhausted. I'm fine, Remy murmured. No, you're not, Nora said kindly. You're shaking. He looked down. He was. Come here, Nora said gently. She pulled him toward the couch, guiding him to sit beside her. I know today is overwhelming. And I know what it feels like to be the weakest person in the room. Remy stiffened. I'm not weak. Nora blinked, eyes widening. Oh no. I didn't mean you are weak. I meant you feel weak. Her voice softened immediately. And that's okay. Remy looked away. Nora touched his hand lightly. You're carrying too much. Let me help take some of it. Remy swallowed hard. Okay. She smiled warmly, almost fondly. Then she said softly, You don't always have to be beside him, you know. Remy blinked. What? Your presence is enough, Nora whispered. You don't need to be in every meeting or every conversation. Sometimes love means stepping back to let someone breathe. Remy froze. She sounded reasonable. So caring. He couldn't argue. She stood and straightened her dress. I'll check on Danson. Remy nodded numbly. She walked toward the study. But Mason stopped her with one quiet word. Nora. She turned. Mason looked at her for a long, unreadable moment. Then he said quietly, You're very good at sounding gentle. Nora blinked innocently. But I am gentle. Mason didn't smile. Be careful. Nora tilted her head. Of what? Mason's eyes sharpened. Hurting people without meaning to. Nora's expression flickered, just one quick moment of surprise, before returning to softness. I would never. Then she slipped into the study. Mason watched the closed door. His jaw set slowly. And Remy sat on the couch, staring at his shaking hands, suddenly unsure why he felt worse than he did yesterday. Not because Nora had hurt him, but because she'd been so kind. And kindness, when it came from someone that beautiful, that warm, that sincere, left the deepest cuts. He didn't realize it yet. He didn't see the small shifts. He didn't feel the slow separation beginning. But Mason did. And he watched the study door with a cold, uneasy heaviness settling into his chest. Because the more Nora smiled, the more he felt something dangerous moving underneath it. And Remy, sweet, trusting, tender Remy, was sinking right into her hands. Chapter 6. The following day started with the elevator dinging at 7 in the morning. Remy hadn't eaten. Danson hadn't finished his coffee. Mason hadn't even fully woken up. But Nora stepped in like she was walking into a sunrise. Good morning, she chirped, juggling folders, her tablet, and something that looked suspiciously like a schedule board. Remy blinked. What is all that? Efficiency, Nora said happily. Danson raised a brow. For who? For all of us, she replied, spreading the folders on the dining table. I made a new system. Mason slid into a chair with a grunt. You made a system overnight? Nora nodded proudly. Just 3 actually. Version A for optimism, version B for realism, and version C for panic. Danson blinked slowly. Which one is today? Nora tapped the third folder. Panic. Remy nearly choked. Why panic? Nora gave him a gentle look. Because Dorn emailed at 4 a.m. He's bringing 2 Weston advisors with him today. Danson sat upright. 2. Yes. Nora sighed. Mr. Hale and Mrs. Arden. They're both intense. Mason frowned. Meaning? Nora hesitated. Meaning they talk like they're always about to fire someone. Remy's stomach twisted. Nora touched his shoulder lightly. Don't worry. They're not meeting with you. Remy tried to smile. It didn't work. Danson leaned forward. All right. What's the plan? Nora immediately brightened again, flipping open version C. Look. She pointed to neatly drawn boxes. This is the timeline for today. Meetings, breaks, prep sessions, and messaging points. Danson blinked. You did all this? Yes, Nora said simply. I don't like chaos. Chaos makes people scared. Her gaze flicked to Remy softly. And I don't want anyone scared today. Remy looked away. It didn't help. He was scared anyway. But her voice made him feel looked after, which only confused him more. Danson pulled the schedule closer. All right, walk me through it. Nora stood straighter, shoulders pulled back. First, a prep meeting with Mason. He's the calmest person here. Mason raised a brow. That is wildly inaccurate. Nora ignored him sweetly. Second, a quick call with your parents, Danson. They need reassurance you're controlling the narrative. Danson groaned. They won't believe it. Nora smiled. But they'll believe me. Danson blinked at her. Remy looked up sharply. Mason's eyes narrowed. But Nora continued calmly. I'll join the call. I'll phrase things in a way that soothes them. You can soothe my parents? Danson muttered in disbelief. Nora shrugged modestly. People listen when you sound gentle. Remy felt something sink inside him. She said it so casually, so naturally. Mason spoke quietly. That's a dangerous skill. Nora looked at him innocently. It's not dangerous. It's helpful. Mason didn't answer. At 9 a.m., they began. Nora became a force. Not loud. Not demanding. Just everywhere. Fixing Danson's tie. Adjusting his tone before a call. Smoothing a wrinkle on his sleeve. Reminding him to breathe. Handing him water before he even asked. Guiding him with a hand on his elbow, polite, gentle, confident. Remy watched from the edge of the room, feeling himself shrink without anyone pushing him. Every time Nora touched Danson's arm, Remy looked away. Every time she smiled at him, Remy's chest tightened. Every time Danson thanked her, Remy flinched. But Nora never once looked smug. Never once smirked. Never once acted like she was taking anything. She simply existed near Danson, softer than a whisper, calmer than a Sunday morning. And Remy felt himself sliding out of the frame. He didn't know why. He didn't know how. He just knew that every moment Nora spent next to Danson made it harder for Remy to breathe. When Dorn arrived at 10 a.m., Nora greeted him first. "Good morning, Mr. Dorn," she said kindly. "Thank you for coming." He stiffened. "Nurse, Miss Weston. You received my message." "Yes," Nora said. "And we're prepared." Dorn blinked. "You're prepared?" Nora handed him a folder. "I organized everything you asked for. And some things you didn't ask for. I hope that's okay." Dorn stared at the folder like it was a bomb. Danson watched with a mix of awe and confusion. Nora smiled gently. "Let's talk before the others arrive." She guided Dorn toward the conference area. Danson stood to follow, but Nora touched his arm lightly. "Stay," she whispered. "I'll handle the opening." Danson froze. "You sure?" "Yes." She smiled warmly. "Trust me." He nodded slowly. Remy felt a stinging twist in his chest. He didn't understand why it hurt. Because she wasn't doing anything wrong. She wasn't being cruel. She wasn't taking Danson. She was just good at being needed. Better than Remy knew how to be. For the next hour, Nora moved like a quiet storm. She coordinated the advisors, rearranged schedules, softened Dorn's tone, translated business language into reassuring instructions, made everyone calm, even Danson, especially Danson. He smiled more when she spoke, relaxed when she guided him, listened when she suggested. Remy stood near the wall, invisible in plain sight. Once, Nora looked over at him. Her expression was warm, gentle, inviting. But Remy felt something in his own chest sink anyway. By noon, the Weston advisors had arrived. Mrs. Arden was sharp, hair tight, tone tighter. Mr. Hale was wide-shouldered, intimidating and silent. Remy stepped back instinctively. Nora noticed. She moved toward him immediately. "Hey," she whispered softly. "Don't disappear." Remy blinked. "I'm not disappearing." "You look like you want to," Nora murmured. "Stay near me." Remy swallowed. "Why?" "Because people treat you differently when someone stands beside you." She took his hand for a moment, warm, small, reassuring. Mason watched the gesture from across the room. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Nora released Remy's hand just as Danson approached. "Are you okay?" Danson asked him quietly. "Yes," Remy said automatically. Nora answered instead. "He's overwhelmed." Remy stiffened. "I didn't say that." "You didn't need to," she said gently. Remy looked down. Danson nodded sympathetically. "Sit down if you need to." Nora touched Remy's back lightly. "Go rest. Please." "I'm fine," Remy whispered. Nora smiled softly. "You don't have to be." He walked away, feeling heavier. The meetings began at 1 p.m. Remy sat in the corner again. Nora sat beside Danson. Every time a question came up, Nora answered. Every time a harsh comment was thrown at Danson, Nora softened it. Every time Mrs. Arden criticized Remy indirectly, Nora defended him gently. But her words had layers. Soft layers. Layers that made Remy feel comforted. And also like he couldn't defend himself. "I'll speak for him," Nora said once, touching Danson's arm. "He's too stressed." Remy felt something sharp twist inside him. Lydia, watching from the back, muttered under her breath, "Oh no." Mason didn't even bother hiding his scowl. After hours of discussion, the advisors left for a break. Danson sank onto the couch, exhausted. Nora sat beside him, handing him water. "You did well," she said softly. Danson sighed. "I hated every minute." "I know," Nora said kindly. "I was watching you. Your shoulders tense when you're overwhelmed." Danson blinked at her. "You noticed that?" She smiled. "I notice everything." Remy stood in the archway, unnoticed. Mason walked up beside him and whispered, "Tell me what's wrong." Remy swallowed. "I don't know." "You don't look okay." "I'm fine," Remy lied. "No," Mason said quietly. "You're fading." Remy's eyes burned. He blinked rapidly, looking away. Mason frowned. "She's not hurting you. But she's taking up space she doesn't know she's taking." Remy said nothing. He didn't know how to put the feeling into words. He didn't even understand the feeling himself. Nora wasn't cruel. She wasn't cold. She wasn't trying to harm anyone. She was just helpful. So helpful. And every moment she helped Danson made Remy feel smaller. Less needed. He hated that feeling. He hated that he couldn't blame her. Later, as Danson stepped into another call, Nora approached Remy again. "You were quiet today," she said softly. "Sorry." "No," she said immediately. "Don't apologize." She sat beside him, her voice gentle. "I know you want to be part of everything. But this level of pressure? It hurts people." "I can handle it," Remy whispered. Nora hesitated. Then placed her hand over his. "I believe you," she said softly. "But not everyone else does." Remy's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" "The advisors," she said slowly. "They don't trust you yet. They think Danson protects you too much." Remy's heart sank. "Oh." Nora quickly shook her head. "No, no, no, don't take it personally. They don't know you. They haven't seen your strength." Remy looked down. "But," she continued softly, "until they do, you might make things harder for Danson." Remy's chest twisted painfully. Nora squeezed his hand. "I'm telling you this because I care. And because Danson needs one person in his life who isn't drowning right now." Remy looked up at her. She looked sincere. So concerned. Remy nodded slowly. "Okay." Nora smiled gently. "Thank you." She stood and walked toward Danson. And Remy sat alone on the couch, feeling like he'd just agreed to disappear. By late afternoon, the penthouse was quiet except for the tension humming beneath everyone's skin. Danson ran through last-minute notes. Nora fixed the lighting, straightened files, and whispered calming instructions. Remy sat at the table, hands clasped tightly, trying to breathe. Mason leaned against the wall, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. He watched Nora glide across the room, soft voice, gentle touch, perfect posture. She corrected Danson's collar, whispered reassurance in his ear, placed a hand on his arm, smiled up at him softly. Danson smiled back. And Remy, across the room, watched something in himself quietly shatter. Mason exhaled through his nose. "Remy." Remy didn't look up. "Are you okay?" Mason asked. "Yeah." "You look like you're drowning." Remy swallowed. "I think I am." Mason's jaw clenched. Across the room, Nora glanced over. Her expression softened. "Remy," she called gently. "You all right?" Remy forced a smile. "Fine." She nodded, smiling warmly. Then returned to organizing Danson's notes. Mason murmured under his breath. "She's not trying to break him, but she is." Remy blinked rapidly to keep tears from forming. "I know," he whispered. And the chapter closes with that unbearable quiet. Nora shining. Danson trusting. Remy fading. And Mason watching it happen with hands he can't yet move. Chapter 7. By the next morning, the air in the penthouse felt thin. Tight. Uneasy. No one said anything about yesterday, not the way Remy had shaken, not the way Nora had filled every space in the room, not the way Danson barely looked up anymore unless she touched his arm first. But the silence said everything. At 7:30, the elevator dinged. Nora stepped out with her usual bright smile and 2 bags of breakfast. "I brought food," she said cheerfully. "Because everyone here forgets that bodies need fuel." Remy didn't move. Mason didn't blink. Danson smiled faintly. "You're too good to us." Nora winked. "I know." She set the bags down and started unpacking, humming softly. But something felt different. Not her smile. Not her tone. Something underneath. Like the humming wasn't a tune, it was a calculation. Remy watched her hands move. Precise. Predictable. Practiced. He didn't understand why that suddenly scared him. By 10, Dorn called. Then Danson's father. Then Mrs. Arden. Every time the phone rang, Nora reached it first. Every time someone spoke harshly, she answered before Danson could. Every time Remy opened his mouth, she silenced him with a quiet, "It's okay, I'll handle it." And every time she handled it, Danson looked at her like she was a miracle. Remy watched hot. Mason watched, furious. Lydia watched, confused. Nor didn't watch anyone. She watched the board. She watched the Weston advisors. She watched power shifting in invisible lines. And she controlled every inch of it. Softly. Smiling. Sometime after noon, Remy slipped out to the hallway, needing air. Breathing beside Nora made him feel like he was shrinking by the second. He stood near the corner, leaning against the wall, trying to stop shaking. Footsteps approached. He straightened. Nora turned the corner, smiling as she always did. "Oh," she said warmly. "There you are." "I was looking." Her phone rang. She paused, glanced at the screen, and exhaled. "Give me 1 second, okay?" she whispered to Remy. He nodded faintly. She stepped a little further down the hall, her back to him. He didn't mean to listen. He truly didn't. But the hallway carried sound like a confession. "Is it done?" Nora asked softly into the phone. Remy froze. Her voice. It wasn't sweet. It wasn't soft. It was controlled. Cold. Calculating. "Good," she murmured. "I need the directors to feel pressured before the board meets." Remy's breath caught. "I told you," she continued calmly. "You don't need the truth. You need doubt. Doubt spreads faster." Remy's stomach twisted. He stepped back, but quietly. Nora didn't hear him. "No," she said, voice dropping even lower, "Danson can't know yet. If he panics too early, I lose leverage. And I can't lose leverage." Remy's legs nearly gave out. His heart pounded painfully. She went on. "Tell Mrs. Arden the sample reports came from Remy. She'll believe it. She already thinks he's fragile." Remy felt like the world cracked under him. His vision blurred. His breath turned sharp and uneven. He wanted to run. He wanted to scream. He wanted to disappear. But he couldn't move. He could only stare at the girl who'd smiled at him every morning. The girl who touched his hand. The girl who whispered comfort. The girl who said she didn't want to be the one who destroyed anything. Nora Weston. Eleanor Weston. His friend. Danson's maybe wife. The girl he'd trusted. Her next words sliced straight through him. "No, it's fine if Remy gets hurt a little," she said softly, calmly, like she was listing groceries. "As long as he doesn't break too early." Remy's knees buckled. He gripped the wall to keep from collapsing. Her tone was emotionless. "No," she continued, "I don't want him gone yet. He keeps Danson unstable. And unstable men are easier to maneuver." Remy's stomach twisted violently. He clamped a hand over his mouth. Nora finished the call. Still calm. Still composed. "Good work," she whispered, then ended the call. She slipped her phone into her bag and turned around. And froze. Remy stood in the middle of the hallway, eyes wide, chest heaving, face pale. Their eyes met. Nora blinked once. Twice. Then she smiled. Not the sweet smile. Not the Noraladen cookie smile. A smaller one. Sharper. Cold at the edges. "Oh," she said quietly. "You heard." Remy stumbled backward. She took one small step toward him. Remy flinched like she'd raised a weapon. Her smile faded a little. "Remy," she said gently, "you're scaring yourself. Come here." "No," he whispered. "Come here," she repeated, voice like glass sliding across stone. He shook his head rapidly. She sighed softly, then walked toward him anyway. Remy backed up until his shoulders hit the wall. Nora stopped just in front of him. Close. Too close. Her face was unreadable. "You weren't supposed to hear that," she said quietly. Remy's breath broke. Why would you?" "Remy," she murmured. "Stop shaking." He couldn't. She lifted a hand toward him. He flinched again. She paused, then lowered her hand. "You think I'm hurting you," she said softly. "But I'm not. I'm guiding things." "You're lying," Remy whispered. "No," she said simply. "I'm telling the truth now. You earned that." His chest tightened painfully. "Why?" he choked. "Why are you doing this?" Nora tilted her head a little, studying his face. Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "Because alliances matter more than feelings." Remy felt something inside him crumble. Nora continued calmly. "And because the Cole family doesn't know how to protect themselves from their own sentimentality. Someone has to control the damage." He shook his head violently. "You're trying to ruin Danson." "Ruin him?" Nora repeated, amused. "No. I'm trying to save him. But he won't cooperate unless he feels cornered." "Corner," Remy gasped. "You're cornering him?" Nora nodded slowly. "Gently." Remy stared at her in horror. He felt like he was drowning in a nightmare. Nora leaned in closer, dropping her voice until it barely existed. "You're the pressure point, Remy." He froze. "You're the emotional center," she whispered. "The weak spot. The place he breaks first." Tears filled Remy's eyes. Nora sighed softly. "This isn't personal," she murmured. "You're just useful." The word shattered him. He didn't breathe. Didn't blink. Didn't move. Nora reached out and brushed a tear from his cheek gently. He flinched violently. She exhaled. "Remy," she whispered, "stop making this harder." "You," he gasped. "You're a monster." Nora didn't even blink. "I'm an heiress," she corrected softly. "There's a difference." He nearly collapsed. But footsteps echoed from behind the corner. Nora stepped back instantly, face shifting, mask sliding on, kindness pouring back into her expression like warm light. Danson turned the corner. "Remy? Nora? Everything okay?" Remy's jaw trembled. Nora smiled at Danson, soft, sweet, perfect. "Everything's fine," she said lightly. "Remy just needed some air." Danson looked at her, concerned. Then at Remy. "You okay?" Remy couldn't speak. Nora stepped closer, toward Danson, not Remy. She leaned into Danson's shoulder just slightly, like she needed support. "I think we all need a break," she whispered. Danson touched her back gently, protective. "Yeah. Let's take one." Remy watched the scene with hollow eyes. And then Mason appeared behind Danson. He looked at Remy. Really looked. And Remy's shaking told him everything. Mason's eyes darkened. "Nora," he said quietly. She turned, smiling politely. "Yes." Mason stared at her with slow-burning hatred. Nora smiled brighter. "Is something wrong, Mr. Mason?" Mason didn't blink. He didn't move. He only said one sentence. "You played the wrong boy." Nora's eyes flickered, to slightly, a tiny crack in the mask. But then she smiled. "So, perfect." "No," she whispered. "I played the right one." And Remy felt his heart drop through the floor. Chapter 8. By the time the morning sun hit the penthouse windows, the whole place felt wrong. No one said it aloud, but the air carried it like a warning. Nora arrived early. She stepped through the door with a soft smile, carrying another carefully chosen breakfast bag, humming like this was any other day. "Good morning," she said lightly, placing the food on the counter. "Everyone's up early. That's a good sign." Remy looked away immediately. Mason didn't speak. Danson forced a tired smile. "You don't have to keep bringing food," he murmured. She waved it off. I like helping. She said that word, helping, like it was her identity. She moved through the room with delicate confidence, smoothing her hair back, pulling her laptop out before anyone could ask, settling into the chair beside Danson like she already owned the space. When his phone rang, she picked it up before he could reach it. Hello, yes, this is Eleanor Weston speaking on behalf of Danson Cole, she said smoothly. He'll review the drafts when the advisors send the correct copies. Her tone never rose. Her composure never cracked. She handled every call, every tension point, every detail. Danson watched her with the same exhausted gratitude he'd shown all week. Remy watched her with silent dread. Mason watched her with cold calculation, each second sharpening the line he'd been drawing since the day she arrived. Nothing violent happened. Nothing dramatic happened. But the quiet itself was violent. By 10:30, the penthouse had turned into a control room. Documents, calls, financial alerts, Cole advisors sending frantic emails, Weston aides checking in, board members requesting urgent clarification. Every few minutes, Danson's phone buzzed. Nora always reached it first. Not now, she whispered whenever Danson tried to take one. It'll only stress you. And he let her. Remy stood near the window, fingers locked together, trying to breathe evenly. He hated this helpless shaking his body kept slipping into. He hated her soft voice. He hated her gentle hand on Danson's back. He hated how normal it looked to everyone else. He hated that she'd told him the truth in the hallway yesterday, then walked back into the penthouse smiling like she hadn't cracked him open. He hated that she had no fear. She knew he wouldn't tell Danson. She was that confident. Around noon, Nora gathered a small stack of papers, red folder, white folder. The same folders she'd shown Danson earlier. We should go soon, she said quietly. The board will be assembling. Danson nodded, rubbing his forehead. Yeah. Remy looked up sharply. No, wait, Remy stammered. Why are you going with him? Shouldn't someone else? Nora turned slowly. Her expression softened the second she looked at him. Oh, Remy, don't worry. She said it with a voice dipped in honey. I'm just keeping things calm for him. Remy's throat tightened. He swallowed, that's not your job. She smiled gently. I'm his support today. Mason stepped forward. You shouldn't go with her, he said quietly to Danson. Nora looked at Mason for the briefest moment, just long enough to acknowledge the threat. What exactly are you implying? She asked softly. Nothing, Mason replied, tone flat as metal. But Danson shouldn't walk into a hostile building alone. I agree, Nora said sweetly. That's why I'm going. Mason looked like he wanted to grab Danson by the collar and physically remove him from Nora's orbit. But Danson was tired. Too tired. Mason, Danson said with a sigh, please. Not today. It felt like a door slamming shut. On Remy. On Mason. On the truth. Nora's smile deepened by a millimeter. Just enough for Mason to see. When Nora finally approached Danson again to leave, she reached out gently. Her hand hovered near his arm. She never touched him without permission. But she always made it look like he chose her. Are you ready? She asked softly. Danson exhaled. Yeah. She stepped closer, guiding him toward the elevator with the calm confidence of someone escorting a sleepwalker. Remy felt panic flaring under his skin. This felt wrong. All of it. Every second. Nora pressed the elevator button. The doors opened silently. Come on, she whispered to Danson. He stepped inside. Remy took one step forward, shaking. Danson. Nora turned just as Remy spoke. Her expression didn't change. But her eyes held that quiet threat he now understood perfectly. Danson frowned, confused. What's wrong? Remy's voice cracked. Please don't go with her. Danson blinked slowly. Remy, she's helping me. Remy shook his head violently. She's not what you think. Nora cut him off. Remy, sweetheart, don't do this. He flinched. Danson looked between them. Remy, we'll talk after the meeting. I promise. The promise meant nothing. Not with Nora beside him. The elevator doors began sliding shut. Nora tilted her head in soft sympathy. Take care of yourself, okay? That was when Remy's phone rang. His shaking hand lifted it instinctively. Danson's mother. He froze. Even Mason stiffened. Remy answered. Hello. Mrs. Cole's voice hit him like a blow. Sharp, controlled, urgent. Remy. Listen to me. He gripped the phone tighter. Mrs. Cole. Her voice cut through him like a blade. Do not let Nora take Danson into that building. Remy's knees weakened. His breath turned sharp. Mason is with you? She demanded. Yes, Remy whispered. Good. Mason will know what to do. The Westons moved earlier than expected. There's an emergency board vote. Nora is delivering him into it. Remy's stomach dropped open. She's already taken him, he whispered. Silence. Cold and heavy. Danson's mother exhaled slowly. Then listen to me very carefully. Behind her voice, frantic chaos echoed, advisors, phones, shouting. Get out of the penthouse. Right now. Take Mason with you. Leave everything. Remy's voice trembled. Why us? She didn't hesitate. Because the Westons know about you, Remy. Remy stopped breathing. Mason's face sharpened like a blade. Mrs. Cole spoke one more time, low, tight, and deadly serious. Run, Remy. The line went dead. The lights overhead flickered. Mason grabbed Remy's arm instantly. Move, he said. Remy stumbled. Mason, what's? Run. The stairwell door slammed behind them as Mason dragged Remy into the emergency exit, while Danson descended helplessly in an elevator. With Nora by his side, her soft smile hiding the trap she'd led him into. If BL chaos, blushes, and boy drama are your happy place, smash that subscribe button. Boy love ballads is where the magic happens.